When most people picture the American Revolution, they imagine muskets, powdered wigs, and those iconic three-cornered hats. But why did everyone wear them? Were they military equipment, a symbol of wealth, or simply an 18th century fashion trend? As it turns out, the answer is all three. Today, we call them tricorn hats, but during the 18th century, people usually referred to them simply as cocked hats. The style evolved from the large, broad-brimmed hats popular throughout Europe during the 1600s. Over time, people began folding and pinning up the brims, and eventually, all three sides were turned upward, creating the familiar shape we recognize today. And by the early 1700s, the cocked hat had become one of the defining fashions of the Atlantic world. The cocked hat wasn't just fashionable, but it was practical. Folding up the brim prevented the hat from interfering with the soldier's musket while drilling or firing, and it also improved peripheral vision compared to older wide-brimmed styles. The shape helped channel rainwater away from the wearer's face. And while the cocked hat wasn't revolutionary military technology, it represented an improvement over earlier designs. These practical advantages helped explain why military organizations throughout Europe adopted them. But practicality alone doesn't explain the cocked hat's popularity. The truth is that they were fashionable. Soldiers weren't the only people wearing them. Merchants, lawyers, politicians, and wealthy gentlemen throughout Europe and the American colonies all adopted the style. George Washington wore one. British officers wore them. Members of colonial society with the means to do so often wore them as well. In many ways, the cocked hat was the 18th century equivalent of the modern business suit. It communicated respectability, social standing, and adherence to contemporary fashion. If you wanted to look like a successful gentleman in the 18th century, you probably wore a cocked hat. By the late 18th century, fashions began to change. The three-cornered cocked hat gradually evolved into the two-cornered bicorn hat, famously associated with Napoleon Bonaparte. Eventually, military headwear became increasingly practical and standardized, giving rise to styles such as the shako. The age of the cocked hat had come to an end. Yet today, it remains one of the most recognizable symbols of the American Revolution. Not because it was uniquely American, but because it represented the style, practicality, and identity of an entire era. So the next time you see George Washington depicted wearing a tricorn hat, remember, he probably would have called it a cocked hat. It wasn't simply military equipment. It wasn't just a fashion statement. It was both. A practical design that became one of the defining symbols of the 18th century. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to Handheld History, where we explore history's mysteries, forgotten stories, and the ideas that shaped our world.